This here is Bob. He represents nitrates, acetates, ammonium, and all group 1 alkali metals. He's always soluble and mixes with any substance. Everyone likes Bob. These guys represent all the other elements. As you can see, everyone loves Bob. He's soluble with any substance, element, or compound. Moving on.
This is John. He represents all group 17 elements, or halides. He's mostly soluble, so he gets along well with most people, as we'll see here. However, as stated before, John isn't soluble with everyone. Group 17 elements or halides are insoluble with lead-2, mercury-1, and silver.
This here is Tom. In this visual representation, he represents lead-2, mercury-1, and silver. Now let's see what happens when John tries to execute the same play from before, but this time with Tom. As we can see, it didn't go too well. Tom and John just don't get each other. The two are simply insoluble.
Now let's move on to sulfate. Sulfate is soluble with most elements. However, like the group 17 elements, it does have its exceptions. Let's see what happens when sulfate tries to run a play with Tom, our lead-2, mercury-1, and silver representative, and Luke, our representative for calcium, barium, and strontium.
Clearly it didn't work out. This is because sulfate is insoluble with lead-2, mercury-1, silver, calcium, barium, and strontium. He has a lot of enemies. Now we'll move on to the mostly insolubles. This is Ted. He represents chlorates, chromates, and phosphates. Let's see what happens when he tries to interact with other elements.
That's right. As we just saw, it's obvious that most don't like Ted. This is because he's mostly insoluble and doesn't mix well with others. After that cruel encounter, Ted is obviously feeling down. However, he's not as alone as he thinks. These two represent ammonium and group 1 alkali metals, and they're the only ones who are soluble with Ted. They're his only friends. The two cheer Ted up and make him realize that he'll always be able to count on them being soluble.
Let us move on to the final rule. This is Jake. He represents sulfur and hydroxide. Like chlorate, chromate, and phosphate, he's mostly insoluble too. As we can see, whenever Jake tries to join in on the fun, most don't mix well with him, so they reject him. Once again, we witness another poor soul grieving on their own. In this case, Jake walks solemnly by himself.
However, like Ted, Jake also has a few good pals. These pals are ammonium, G1 metals, or alkali metals, calcium, strontium, and barium. They are the only ones Jake is soluble with. The three carry Jake off into the sunset. Now that you know about the solubility rules, here's how they're used. These rules are used to determine the products of chemical equations, like whether or whether not a precipitate or a solution will form. These rules also help to determine the net ionic equation of a certain reaction. Solubility rules are crucial to understanding chemistry.